Okay. Right. Welcome. Welcome to the Fearless Pricing Podcast. Our guest today is Tom Kozačinski, product designer and stand-up comedian extraordinaire turned coach. Today we're going to start the series called What I Should Have Charged because I think that can make a really powerful thing to discuss, to air out. It's pretty hard to talk about Tom because I know you for so long and there's so much to say. One of the things that I would like to emphasize is that you're a recent TEDx speaker, and it's good to have you here. Good to have you here, man.
Thank you, Philip. I really appreciate it. And thank you for having me. I'm really honored to be the first person on your first episode of the What Should I've Priced show. So let me get into it. I want to tell you a story about what I should have priced. Is one that I recall very often, especially when talking to younger entrepreneurs and students and people thinking about business. And it was my highest paid project in my first company when I started my first business, which was I dropped out of college, got a job, worked there for 5 months, and decided, you know what, this, I'm gonna do this better. I can do this better, and I'm gonna start my own company. I was completely wrong, but this is what I believed. So I started my company with a friend, and we were building websites at the time. And not only websites, we were building everything from branding, business card design, everything that you could have possibly designed or code, we would be doing. And our our main shtick was we are the cheapest on the market, so we can do everything and we can do it the cheapest, which was not a good strategy. Not at all. And first clients that we found were through like a version of Yellow Pages. We were just going through numbers and calling people like, hello, we are this and that, we are the guys that do internet stuff, can we build you a website or maybe design you a business card? And then we do that on high volume, and eventually we would find a prospective client. So one of them was a business beauty salon type thing, like a studio for everything that women do when they are in this venue, from hair, nails, eyelashes, shaving, massaging, whatever the thing they do. I don't know. So it was everything. So they did everything. It was a beauty salon. And it was, the name of the business was Marilyn, as in Marilyn Monroe. And the logo was just a photo of Marilyn Monroe. So they were like, oh, we would like to have like a proper logo and all that stuff. So we came in and they wanted everything, basically. It was late November when we got the project. Sorry, late October when we got a project, and they wanted, it was Christmas was coming up, so they wanted to kind of refresh the branding before Christmas, but also then do coffee mugs that they would give away to their customers. So what we end up agreeing was a complete new branding, so logo, business cards, letterheads, the book of standards for print and everything, the complete visual branding, then design of the coffee mugs that are going to be printed, web design, building a new website and coding the new website, including the hosting and domain. So we did everything for them in terms of service, like a full turnkey solution. And then on top of all of that, because we were then partnering with a local business that was actually doing printing on the coffee mugs and all the stuff, we supplied them with the actual coffee mugs and everything. So we sourced and did everything for them. The guy that was doing the coffee mugs, he gave us his original price for the coffee mug plus his printing plus his profit, whatever that was. And then we didn't charge anything on top of that because we were just happy to get the business. So to recap, complete branding, website, design for coffee mugs included, business card design, business cards included. Oh, and then on top of all of that, there was a design for their business storefront window. It was a huge double-sided door with two big windows on the side. So I designed, it was like a series of photographs of nice, like Hollywood style, the hairs and makeup and whatever. It was very cool. Did that, and then also did printing for that. And then by the time the project was nearing the end, it was end of November, and personally, I came there and put the vinyl on the windows myself on a freezing cold with my freezing fingers. Did everything for that. I paid for the coffee mugs and the printing and everything up front. And then total for everything done, I charged $1,000 for complete branding website,
Mhm.
including coffee mugs, including printing. My total profit for me and my partner in the business, our total profit before VAT was, I'm going to speak in American dollars, was $50. And then past VAT and everything and take home, each of us got out around like $12 for a month of work. I got home that night. I remember when we got the money, issued an invoice, it got paid. We covered all of the costs and everything. Once I got basically nothing, next to nothing in my hand, it was the first time, not the last time, but the first time I cried in my business because of my business. It was, I thought to myself, like, this wasn't supposed to be this hard. And it was a really painful lesson, what I should have charged. And, and now, today, for that type of job, I wouldn't even have a conversation under 20,000 pounds. Like below 20K, I wouldn't even pick up the phone. But back then, it was, oh man. And it took me a while to get to a point to realize, oh, this, I knew that like my service is worth much more, but I was just afraid to charge much more. And it was a painful lesson, but it was a lesson that I had to have.
Thank you for that. I was not hoping to get tears the first time that I asked this, but yeah, it's a very good thing.
It was a painful lesson, and I cried. Last time I cried in my business was like a little over a year ago. Last time I cried, and I was crying because I was like, I can't believe I got paid this much. So, but it's like 15 years between the crying for I can't believe I got paid this little to, oh my God, I can't believe I get paid this much. But I think it evens out in the end.
I think I still have your business card from that time that you and Tino started that one.
I'd love to see
Uh,
that.
So anyway, it's very usual that people just coming in from honing their craft start to conflate we can be the cheapest, therefore we're the best, because that's why you were saying we're the best and we can do it cheapest. So it's not a fake best, it's a real best, right? We're best and cheapest
and stupidest. So
it's you could call it naive, but
Yeah.
that's all that you could call it.
Absolutely naive. Something in my mind started to shift when one guy gave us a tip after we charged him for his website. So the website was a fairly simple landing page with 2 subpages, not much. It was a local coach business, so like buses and coaches for rent and stuff like that. And the whole website, I think, was around like $500. And dude comes in and he's like, "Can I pay in cash?" I was like, "Yeah, I don't mind, like whatever, cash, card, like whatever you want to pay." He pulls out a bundle of cash from his pocket and just like rolls off 5 bills and just drops it on the table, and then takes the 6th one. It's like, "And here's for the coffee, boys." And at that point, I was like, "Oh man, this is, oh dude, we're cheap. We're cheap if a local businessman that drives a bus can pay us in cash and then leave us a tip for coffee that it was around like our twice more profit than it was on the last job." So
True, it's an improvement.
it's an improvement. But I want to ask you, taking all of this into account, I'm sure like I can answer this question like to 80% of accuracy, but I want to hear from you. Like,
Okay.
what are the blind spots that people have when deciding on a price that are not aware of? Because I know people thinking, "Okay, these are my costs, this is my time. Like, I have cost and time, and then I'm going to add 20% for margin profit." And then what do people forget usually?
What you just described is the margin, right? There's, put things simply, there's the cost, above that there's the price, and above that there's the value. That's how it's supposed to go. The price has to be somewhere between the value and the cost, because if it's below cost, then you're losing money. If it's above the client's value, then they're losing money. So the only acceptable price would be somewhere between cost and price. With me so far? Okay. So the difference between your price and the cost is basically called the margin. right? And this is where people stop. They say, okay, this is my cost, my direct cost and my time, and then I add something for me, right? And this is a margin, and there it is. That's my price. Now, the problem with this is that it only tells you if it's a good idea to sell at that price, but it tells you nothing about whether it is how good of idea is it to buy at this price. And this is a major blind spot, because if your costs were 400 and you said, haha, okay, we'll tack something on, we'll charge 500 for it, we'll each get a 50. Now, look, like you said, it was not too much work for you guys, right?
No, but on that project, on the first one was a lot of work. The second one,
No, the second one.
oh yeah, the second
we're
one
talking
was
about the 500, 600. Okay.
yeah, okay.
So if the client knows or suspects that they would have to pay at least 800 to somebody not that naive, and he's getting you guys to do it for 500, then the difference between your price and his value is pretty big. So he feels completely confident. He maybe even feels sorry for you guys. So he tacks on another 100, right? I think the major blind spot is thinking in the terms of whether this is a good idea to sell first, and basically not even considering how good of an idea this is to buy from the client's perspective. Because if you knew about his perspective, then you would see that the difference is simply too big. And that may sound like a good idea. However, it's not when you're selling something based on expertise, a service based on expertise. We've all been around the internet for long enough to know that things that seem too good to be true usually are. If for any reason you suspect that somebody is really good, but their price is nowhere near what it should be for somebody who is really good, you're probably going to be overly cautious. You're going to keep an eye on that, right? Because in the physical world, when you're talking about commodities, if you get a bargain, usually there's a reason for this. But if we're talking about potatoes, you know there's going to be a lot that you have to throw away, but you can see that, oh yeah, these are kind of moldy, but I can use most of it, right? It's worth it. Or if you're buying a house, right, well, it's a little far from the bus, or it's a little far from, well, or these need to be renewed or whatever. Here, when you're talking about service, it's not that easy to see why are you getting a bargain, and you start to get nervous. So it's called basically a risk cost, right? If your tooth hurts, do you really want to go and find out why that dentist is so cheap? Right? Not really. So it's one of the three additional costs. So it can also be called a blind spot, as you said. So the risk cost is one of them. The convenience cost is another. Now, if you have, I don't know, hairdresser or somebody like that, a professional masseuse, and they move 45 minutes away from you, or you move from them, and their price is still the same, is it?
Yeah, of course, I'm losing the commute time.
The commute time, maybe some money for gas. It's definitely way more inconvenient. So that inconvenience confers a cost on you that she's not going to get.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're not going to pay more to her, but you will feel like you're paying more. And for the final example, if you have a choice of two therapists and one of them has a lower price, but is also your ex, right? Yeah, that's called an ego cost. I think between not considering the difference between the value and the price and not the cost and the price, and not considering these additional three costs that people pay although you don't get them as a seller, there's some massive differences between what people can charge and what they are actually able to charge.
Yeah. So what would be your advice?
I think when you try to determine a price for something, you should be clear on what you're selling, what the value is, and what are the alternatives for that value. So if you were trying to solve the problem that you're trying to solve, but from the client side, who would you ask? How much would that cost? That gives you some context. And then the other question that's interesting is, in what chain are you involved? So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you're a wedding photographer. So the dress is going to be 2,000, the reception is going to be 9, the cake is going to be 2, right? The bouquet is going to be 1, and your services are 300. You're the odd one out. Your offer might not be given its due consideration because it doesn't sound like it makes sense. And yes, it can be less, but most people only plan to be planning a wedding once, right? So it's not that important that all of this is, the cheapest that they can find. Usually it's not something that they plan to have a rerun of. So might as
Well, not with the same people, at least.
well, yes. Details,
Yeah, details.
right?
But yeah, you're right. This is actually one of the lessons that I picked up from you was early on and I think we were talking about burgers back then. Burgers. Like the average price was around, I think back then, like 15. And
Yeah.
then is like for 12, 12 is a cheaper one, and 18 is like a premium one. Like in 25 is like five
Back
star.
then, yes.
Yeah. And then if somebody offers you a burger for 4, it's like it can be this, it's still beef, right? And it's still vegetables and it's still a bun. But you kind of wonder, like, what is it actually in this burger? Because I ain't seen no cow nearby. So, and there are no stray cats as well.
Yeah.
And this kind of helped me shift my focus on it doesn't matter basically what other people charge as well. And even in the last couple of years, I think this is the lesson that I've been learning constantly, like over and over. I relearned this lesson and it kind of crystallized a couple of weeks ago. I had a conversation with this person who was at her job and working within medical industry adjacent. So it's not medical,
Okay.
but it's there. And she was happy with her job, happy with her salary. And by accident, she discovered that the new person that joined the company with less experience and less obligations had double her salary, right? So, and at that point, she became miserable. She was like, "Oh, they do not value me," blah blah blah. And I was like, "No, you do not value yourself, obviously, because you were undercharging and you were happy. So you're the one who's not valuing yourself because they were paying you whatever you asked for, and they pay that person whatever they asked for. So all of us basically determine our value based on comparing ourselves to who and what is within our surroundings. So especially when I started, I was like, okay, I want to build websites. How much is this guy charging? Okay, this guy has so much experience. He's so much older and better, and he charges 10K. Okay, I'm just starting. My company that I quit was charging this. If I go below that, and it's always comparing yourself and kind of trying to place yourself, well, where do you fit? But in the actuality is this is what I'm worth. This is what I know. This is what I do. This is what I'm going to charge. It doesn't matter what everybody else is charging. It's my job to find a market for that.
Yes, and in order to find the market, you have to understand who they will compare you to, not who you will compare you. So that what you said is true. She didn't value herself, but not because she didn't try or anything. It's just so I'm about to go on a short rant here. It baffles me how this is not something that gets taught. You went to a school for designers and they showed you stuff, how to do this and how to do that, but not how to charge. No. And people finish medicine. Okay, some of them will get employed and never work from themselves. Not all of them, right? It never gets really mentioned, or if it does, it's completely naive and has nothing to do with the actual market. I think that's a crime.
A crime, or it's by design? A
I think
cynical person might say it's by design.
I think negligence doesn't cost them anything.
That's true, but then again, if I am, let's say that I was an evil person, which I'm not, and I wanted to employ a lot of people in my factory, right? And I build a school to make them learn they need to do in my factory. I'm not gonna tell them what their actual worth is and how to form a union and how to squeeze me out of my own business, right? And now if we apply that logic to the entire school system coming from industrial era, it's no one's interest to teach people how to understand their value and how to price for it.
You have a point there for sure. However, I always say that knowledge workers are foster children of the system because the system is set in a way that benefits the rich people. Yeah, sure. Absolutely. Cool. Especially some of them. And then, secondarily, because they need workers, as in employed people, it also is at least meant to work in some aspects to accommodate wage workers. Doesn't necessarily benefit them, but it's at least meant for them. But knowledge workers operate on a different logic, which, and especially self-employed knowledge workers, where, look, if I have a legal problem and I hire a lawyer, how is it better value for me as a client for them to be done in 1 year as opposed to 2 months? No, it's actually better value for me if they spend less hours on it. And that's not how it works. Right. But why? If you're coaching somebody and you could get them where they want to go with the snap of your finger, isn't that worth more than coaching them for 6 months and not less?
Yeah, that's the thing. I think people perceive the worth more because it takes a lot of time and effort because it was hard. So because it's hard doing this, therefore it must be expensive. Because if it was easy, everybody would do it, right? And
Let me tell you a short fable that I made up about a lazy giant. So once upon a time, there was a lazy giant, and he was a lumberjack. His job was felling trees. But since he was a giant, he only had to lean on a tree and it will fall over. And since he could only be paid, just like every one of his colleagues, by hour, he didn't really get paid well, right? Because his colleagues, they needed the better part of the morning to fell a tree with axes. He just leaned on it. But, there was no real difference between them, so he died poor at the end, right? So, yeah, because it doesn't really take him a lot of time and effort. Only half joking when I say, if you really want to go time and effort, go with how long would it take the client to do this? Because they didn't go to school how to learn this. Well, they could probably Google it, right? They could, I mean, anybody can install a Photoshop and start Googling. That's, that sooner or later they're going to get something. So how long would it get them to do it? Now, that's closer than looking at how long would it take you to do it, because you have already invested 20-ish years into learning this stuff, right? So of course you can't properly charge them for the years of experience, but you can do this. You can say it doesn't matter how long would it take me now. It matters how long it would have taken me if I didn't know all this. It's still subpar, but if you're closer to that logic, sure. Then look at time and material. It's just not yours. You're too efficient.
yeah, basically, the more skillful you are, you get penalized for being good if you're charging on time.
Exactly.
Which is true. When I think it was 2019, I onboarded to a client as a contractor for like 3 months. And in my contract specifically, I put in that I'm not bound by time. or like their working hours. So I'm not your employee. I do not need to be in the office. And this was pre-COVID, mind you. So even I've been a advocate for remote work for years now, for over a decade.
Before it was cool.
Before it was cool and before it was necessary. And I remember, I will never forget this. I came in one day, it was a Thursday. So I would come into the office Tuesdays and Thursdays because I organize my meetings and my team around that, so we can come in, do the work that we need to do together, and then everybody fuck off and does their own thing until next meeting. So I don't have to be there constantly. And I work best when I'm at home in my own office. And I'm coming in, and it was around like 10:30 in the morning, which is, with London commute, you have rush hour in the morning, obviously. And then if I came in like 30 minutes later, I actually save like an hour extra on time because of the traffic.
Commute, yeah.
Commute. So I come in at like 10:30, and this guy, he was a CFO. He looks at me and does this. And he points to his watch and is like, where you are? From like across the office. So I leave my my desk and come to he had his own office, but it was like in a glass, so he can like see everybody. And he's this like old school guy. He's like mid-50s, different generation, different breed. I come in and I ask him, so and so, let's call him John for sake of this conversation. Like, John, what's with this? Like, what is the, like, when? And he says, like, when do you start? It's like, I never stopped. He's looking at me like, what do you mean? Like, I do not stop being a product designer and a UX consultant at 5 p.m. and I do not start at 8 a.m. This is what I do. I've been hired here to do a project, and I'm thinking about it when I'm taking a shit, when I'm eating my lunch, when I'm watching a movie in the evening. I'm thinking about what I'm doing this. So I came here to do my work, and I'm delivering results, not ass in chair time. And my results speak for me. And my results are reported every week. Whenever I work for a client, whatever, I make a point that I will, on Friday, I always deliver, like, this is what has been accomplished this week. And on Monday, I say, like, this is what I'm going to do, especially if I'm a solo contributor. And it's like, if you have a problem with this, let me know. But in my contract specifically, it states that I'm not needed to be here because I do not work for you. And he was just looking at me like, what the f just happened? I was like, if you have any problems, let me know. And that was great. And then I didn't extend the contract. I was like, I don't want to work within this type of environment.
I understand that fully. Tell me, we started with your story. We started by you describing not just turnkey, but done it for you, everything in one place, kind of a project, because that's what it was. So with the benefit of so many years and well, bumps that you went through, how do you view in general, of course you would never go into that kind of a deal now, but how do you view the overarching projects, like I'm going to do everything, now that you have your own niche, your own expertise, your own view at things?
So let me understand this question correctly. How do I view projects that need a lot of work from different aspects of the project if I'm joining as a single person, right? As like a single contributor. So when I have a conversation with a prospective client, I ask them, like, what do you think you need? Let's see what you think you need. And then I try to figure out what they actually need. And then off of that, I will say, like, let's say that they need a new landing page for the new product that they're selling, but they also need some work on the product, and they need some marketing and some copy done. They need some like social media posting and all this stuff. I can do all of that. Of course I can, but I don't want to do that primarily. And this is what I would tell the client. I will not do all of this for you because there are people today who are better at certain aspects of the job, faster, cheaper. I'm not cheap because it takes me a long time to do this. So I have my hourly rate, and there are things where I'm not as good as it takes me longer. So there are people that can drive faster results with bigger value than I can. I can do this for you, but I would rather help you hire a right person, and then I will just charge my little premium on that, like to find you a hire. But I would tell them, I can do all of this for you in 3 months, or we can do everything in a month, and if we get a couple of more people on board. With benefit of hindsight of all of the failures that I have and all the projects that I did, now I know the things that I'm good at, things that I'm not good at, and I've built a network of people that I know who are better than me and are complementary to the things that I do. So I would get them on board. And if client says like, we are not in a hurry, which by the way never happened, I would do that. Like, of course I can work on your project for 6 years. I don't mind. But it's usually, they will appreciate when I say, I can save you time. We can get this quicker, better, faster. And during COVID, I think it was mid 2020, I got hired on a project where I was the only designer. It was a product that they had some pre-seed money, and they had a couple of $1 million to spend. And they were like, okay, we want to hire an A team. We want to hire the best team we can get for the money that we have. And they hired developers that cost a lot of money, like $200K a year plus per person, right? So like really good people got in. And they hired me as a only designer. I don't want to say lead or senior, whatever. I was the only designer, but I was hired because I can cover a lot of stuff. So I can cover research and validation and prototyping and UI design. Like I could do all of this because I've done it for years. But I told them like, this is why I cost as much as I cost. I'm more than happy to say this very open. I was charging them $100 per hour back then for that project, which was a really good, solid project. And they were like, okay, we're going to hire you for 6 months at this rate, but we need the guarantee from the entire team that we're going to get delivered. And the person that they hired to run the project was a person who was from Microsoft and GitHub as a project manager. So she knew what she was doing. She got the theme. So it was a really tight ship that delivered in under 6 months, which was the only project where I worked with people where I would do something, I would deliver it, and it was like, okay, I get it, and get it done, which is very rare. But this is what you get for your money. And I told them, when I was telling them how we're going to build this, was we're going to go in stages. We're going to do this first, and then we're going to transition from wireframing and validation to this part, build a design system, deliver to developers. So I was managing a lot of things in parallel. It was a lot of work. I was burned out, but in 6 months, I made enough money so I can next year focus on other things.
What I heard is, if you're going to do many things at once, charge for it. So that's what I heard. But one thing that you mentioned is it never happened that the client said it's not urgent, right?
Yeah,
it's true. Things that need to be done now, so operative things, are never not urgent. And things like strategy, which is the curse of strategy work, which I usually do, is that it's never urgent, because there's always operative things that are urgent. On the other hand, if you did say, oh yeah, I have time, that would reduce your price significantly. Because if you're any good, why don't you have something better to do than wait for me? I had a client, a photographer, and I would be next to him as he was taking a call from a client, and he says, oh, the photo shoot, oh, anytime next week is fine. It's not like I have other work to do.
No, even if I don't have anything to do, which I've been working really hard past couple of years to reduce my workload, and I just love when I see my calendar empty, which is very rare, but when I get a 1 week of nothing, I still have, yeah, exactly, it's a breath of fresh air, but I still have slots that you can come in, and then everything else is blocked out. Like, this is my time. So even if I'm free, I'm not free.
Yeah. I think it's David C. Baker who says you should have such an active private life that you actively resent any time that you actually have to go to work. And that's how you know that you're going to charge properly. Because by and large, because we see things that are easy to us as easy and simple, we tend to, when I say we, I mean people who offer professional services or services based on expertise, we tend to undervalue ourselves because of something called the curse of knowledge, which says that once you know something, you can't really go back into the mindset of not knowing that. So because you know that felling trees is easy, you just lean on them, you undervalue that it takes other people a lot more, and then you charge inappropriately small amounts, and you get 20% tip because people feel sorry for you.
Yes, thank you for that. Thank you for driving the point home with salt on my wound.
Yes.
And thank you for having me today. I really appreciate you inviting me. This was a really great conversation, and I hope this podcast takes off and you have an amazing load of guests. And then for episode 100, you can invite me again and be
Okay.
much smarter.
I'll write that down. So, where can people find you?
People can find me on my website, which is mylastname.com, and everything is there. And I'm on all social networks. I do everything. I live online, which is a mistake. But if I don't reply right away, that just means that I'm enjoying my empty calendar at that point.
That's awesome. People can find me on LinkedIn more than anywhere else and on fearless-pricing.com. And this is also going to YouTube, I think. So it's going to be everywhere online, as you said. Cool. People, thank you for joining us for this first rendition of the Fearless Pricing podcast, and see you next time.
Don't forget to subscribe. I'm sure that now we set the standard. Not all of the other ones will be as good. So might as well subscribe and prove me wrong.
I think that's a good challenge. Thanks, Tom. No.